Hey, listen, guys, I was talking to a Capricorn and I'm really proud of him because I've been talking to him for a long time. And recently he started going to therapy. And it took a lot of time and a lot of growth on his part to go take this big step. So, for the past couple of weeks, he's been going to therapy. He's been talking to his therapist. And one of the things she told to him is that he really needs to grow. And she wasn't very specific about what kind of growth. And what I got from what he said was emotional and spiritual growth, you know? And he wanted me to talk about what does growth look like? What is it like when, because he's like, oh God, what's going to happen? You know, what does it look like when you're growing in that kind of way? So I went online, of course, I had to do my research, and I found this a really cool list from the Millennial Therapist that talks about what growth looks like. And I went through a lot of these things. I only read the first four, and I think I went through all of them. So I wanted to talk about this because for any of you who are out there who are on a journey to grow, or you know, maybe you've been hearing you need to grow or something like that, this is what growth often entails. Okay? But first, let me do the introduction and then we'll get to the list. I'm Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to someone else who might like it too. Likewise, please stick around to the end of the video and drop us a positive comment. And at the end of the video, I'm going to read some of those positive comments that were dropped in previous videos. One of them might even be yours. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to get a reading, or you want to talk to me on social media, if you would like to get some of the cool merchandise that I have, if you would like to give a love donation to the channel, all that information is underneath this video. If you would like to become one of my patrons on Patreon, that information is also underneath this video. All right, so what does growth entail? The first thing that it can often entail is spending more time alone. And I definitely agree with this one 100%. When I started to grow emotionally and spiritually, a lot of it revolved around going to therapy, going to priestess training, those kind of things. And these types of things, especially like therapy and stuff like that, lead you to spending more time alone, because some of the activities that you need to do for yourself, you need to do them alone. Reading, journaling, and it's not like you can't do these things with other people, because you can, but a lot of times you really need some alone time for self-reflection. So you often do find yourself spending more time by yourself. And that's not a bad thing, because you need to get to know you. So that's where the growth comes in at. You need to spend time self-reflecting. You need to spend time soul searching, as they call it. And where you can do this with other people, it's a lot more effective when you at least do it sometimes by yourself. Number two, losing or changing our relationships. I lost a lot of relationships that I realized I never really wanted. That was the interesting part about them. And some of them I did want. Some of them I wanted desperately, but they just weren't good relationships. Like the relationship with Voldemort. It was awful. It was an awful relationship. And I think back on it, and I didn't even realize at the time how awful it really was. And that relationship definitely ended, and it seemed difficult. You know, it was painful. But now looking back on it, I'm glad. I'm so glad that relationship was ended, because it really wasn't a positive one. And being able to walk away from it was a large part of my growth. But that wasn't the only one. I had relationships with people who just did not have my best interest at heart. I had quote unquote friendships, or people from the old neighborhood, or, you know, people I used to work with that were hanging on, and we were maintaining these relationships, but these relationships had no real value to me, and in some cases to them either. Some of those relationships, sometimes if you look at your relationships, some of them you hold on to for bad reasons, and some of those relationships were that. So I did lose, and some relationships just changed. The dynamic changed, boundaries were set, what I was willing to deal with and put up with changed. So it depends. That definitely did happen. Setting and readjusting boundaries. You will need to set boundaries and readjust them as you grow, because what you find out is that some of your boundaries are non-existent. Some people you don't even have boundaries with, and you should. You should have boundaries with everybody. There should be some type of boundary, even with your own children. Somebody was telling me that they cannot meditate because their children won't leave them alone. And I was like, your kids are like teenagers. What are you talking about? If you can't even get time to meditate with two teenagers, you don't have a healthy boundary. And that is a problem. So you may need to readjust and set boundaries with your loved ones or with people that you meet along the way. Asking ourselves the hard questions. Let me tell you something. If you're trying to grow emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, you are going to have to ask yourself some questions that you may not want to. You may hear some answers that you do not like. But part of the journaling and the therapy and those kind of things is asking yourself hard questions. Like, are these relationships good for me? Do I have healthy boundaries with the people in my life? Is my lover abusive? Am I prone to being around people who aren't that great for me? What mistakes am I making that's opening up the doors to this kind of stuff in my life? And what ways am I being negative? In what ways am I allowing negativity? It's a lot of hard questions, and the answers are how you're going to grow. You're going to answer those questions, and you're going to apply what you learn. Allowing ourselves to grieve. I cried a lot when I was first going through, trying to grow, coming away from these bad relationships. I cried a lot. Cried for like a year or two, like off and on throughout the day. I would just burst into tears. Most of the time nobody saw me because I would hide it, but I cried all the time. And it was okay, because I was grieving things I never allowed myself to grieve. I was grieving the end of relationships that were not healthy. I was grieving the unhealthiness in myself. So there's a lot of stuff to grieve when you're trying to grow. Allow yourself that. If you want to cry, if you want to scream, whatever, allow yourself to grieve. A lot of people are so afraid to cry, or it makes me weak, or those kind of ridiculous things that people will say to me. And I'm like, no, crying isn't about weakness. Crying is about release. So if you need to cry, you need to scream, you need to punch a bag, whatever, release all that energy. It's not good for you. Saying no when we mean no. Some people have a hard time saying no. I never had a hard time saying no, unless it was somebody who was trying to manipulate me. Some of the times that would get difficult, but you have to say no when you mean no. Otherwise, you'll grow to resent the people that you said yes to. So often part of your growth, for some of us, it is learning to say no. Facing our past. When you start to grow, you have to face the shitty stuff you've done. You do. You have to face the shitty stuff you've done. You have to face the awful things that have happened to you. You have to face all of that. You have to face everything. And you can't leave things out. You might deal with some things later, some things more, up front, but you have to deal with all of it. So if you have things from your past that are unpleasant, you will have to deal with those things. But it's a good thing. It's not bad to face your past. It's bad to hold on to those bad memories and that bad energy. Facing it, realizing it, healing it, forgiving it, and letting it go. That's what you want to do. So that's not a bad thing. Accepting ourselves, mistakes and all. As you grow, you will learn that you have to accept yourself as you are. Even if you aren't what you want to be. Most of us are a work in progress. So you might not like the way the progress looks right now. You might be like, I want to be down here. And you might get to where you want to go to. That's ultimately the mission. But you have to accept yourself where you're at to be able to get there. And this is a problem for a lot of people. This requires a lot of self-love, self-worth, self-compassion. And it's not always easy for people to do this. So this one, you have to accept yourself to be able to grow. Stepping into our new identity. So now you figured yourself out and you are a changed person. Now you're stepping into your new identity, which probably was who you already were at your core anyway. But it can be difficult to actually step into the identity. Some people around you may even give you a hard time about your new identity or keep reminding you of who you used to be. So stepping into this new identity will not be easy, but it will be beneficial. You're going to like the new you. You're going to like the healed version of you. Making difficult decisions. As you grow, you will have a lot of difficult decisions to make. Some of them could be about your grieving process or what to do about the past or how to forgive. All those kind of things will come up. So you'll have to make difficult decisions, but they'll be in your best interest. Trying to live out our values. As you're growing, you're going to create new values. You might reinforce some old ones. And now it's time for you to walk the walk. So it's easy to talk the talk, but it's not always easy to walk the walk. So according to this, you're going to be living out these values. And as you do that, as you see yourself living them out, you'll see your growth. That is the growth. Learning to choose ourselves. Oh my goodness. This is so important. So many of us put everything above ourselves. As you start to grow, you should, and most of us do, go up higher in priority. Celebrating our accomplishments and efforts. As you grow, you need to celebrate every accomplishment, every small one, every big one, every effort. Even if you failed, but you made a good effort, you want to celebrate that. Validating our emotions, not just the positive ones. Every emotion you have needs to be processed. The positive ones are usually the easier ones, but the negative ones, you got to figure out what to do with them. You got to figure out why they're there. Those are really important too. You got to figure out what they're trying to teach you. Negative emotions are teaching you something too. If you're angry all the time or sad all the time, that's saying something to you. And you got to explore that and let that be valid. And you got to do something productive with it, not just ignore it. And the last one, learning to listen to your body. Your body is going to give you different information. It's going to give you spiritual information, such as your intuition. It's also going to give you information such as if you're taking good enough care of yourself, which is part of the self-love we talked about. So you have to listen to your body. So that is spiritual and emotional and mental growth. So hopefully we'll all continue to grow. The thing about growth is it's not just a one-time thing. We continue to grow through our lifetime. Now, today's positive comment came from Pamela Neilsworth Devers. I mentioned that I did a review of this deck. It's called the New Orleans Oracle. And on the back of this card, there's an image. And I was like, what is that image? Is it a butterfly? Like, what is that? And Pamela hooked us up and told us what it means. It means, she says, the symbol at the center of the butterfly on the card back is a fleur de lis, the symbol of New Orleans, French for lily flower. So now we know the fleur is in the center. Cool. Thank you, Pamela. Christine Vandenbrink received lots of hearts from me. Hello, Christine. Christine said, oh, she's looking at a different deck. This is the Weaver's Way deck. And no, it's not called Weaver's Way. It's called the Weaver's Oracle. That's what it's called. And Christine said, the art is majestic and mysterious. Lovely deck and guidebook. Thanks, Christine. If you guys haven't had a chance to check out the pick a card readings that I've been doing, or some of the deck reviews, they're really fun. And I explain a lot about how the decks work. And the pick a card readings, anybody can read them. And I give a lot of information in them. So check it out. All right, guys, it's time for us to get going. So you come back soon because I got a lot more to say. See you later.